Hey mom, how's it going?
Oh, Lindsay, today's a fantastic day. I am super excited because I have literally one of my oldest and dearest friends joining us today. Today, we are blessed to have Seth Zaremba, who is the founder of Zinc Insurance. He was one of the co founders of Indium, or Market Source as it was known back then, and is also the founder of Be Atomic. Seth, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Old friends, not old, but we've been friends for a long time. How about that?
That's fair. That's totally fair. I shouldn't say you are though one of the first agents that I met in the insurance industry that I became friends with very, very quickly. There's no question about that.
I actually remember when we met. So it was around an Ohio Insurance Council on a specific project around market access, which later became India, but started off as Market Source. There were agents haggling in the room about all sorts of things, and you were trying to keep us in order. So I think the industry owes you a debt of thanks for that.
I'm going to tell you the room when the day I remembered meeting you was I walked into a room and I looked around. You're always looking for someone in the room that you can connect with, right? So I walked into this room, and there's a lot of people that have suit jackets, white shirts, very serious looks on their faces. And I scanned the room and I see one of them in like neon green socks and a bow tie, I think. And I'm like, he's my guy. That's the one I want to know. I'm pretty confident he is the person that I'm going to know in this room and know really well. And that's not to say the other people in that room aren't fantastic people, but we definitely found a lot of things in common and a lot of things to talk about. And I learned a great deal of what I know about this industry from you and many of the people in that room. So here's what I'd love to do, Seth. We could talk for hours. There's no two ways around that. But I'd love to talk about some of the things that we've learned together over the past 15 years of knowing each other. And I'd love to start with today and work backwards, if you don't mind. So I believe that today there's a ton of buzz around AI, chat GPT, data, and what it could mean. And I'd love to hear where you are today and how those things like data have helped you get to where you are.
Yeah. So we talked about when we met, but today, as a result of all the things that we've done over the last 20 something years, I started Be Atomic, which is an insure tech around solving for those things and making sure that that's a democratized opportunity for independent agents. And so all of that has led me to the place where I am confident and we are turning data into money. We're connecting CRM into AMS and APIs into workflows, all around the idea that there is a margin inside of insurance agencies has yet to be got. And the duplicative value of that margin, whether you're perpetuating to a family member or somebody inside the agency, or eventually even selling it, is massive. And everybody talks about the exit, but very few people have a clear way that operationally they can get there using data and systems and people to accomplish that. And I've seen it in my own life, and I'm seeing it in users' life, that those kind of things, solutions around that, are where there was just not a lot of people spending their time. And everyone was kind of talking about the problem, but very few people were willing to jump into the problem and tackle it. And I get it, because it's not been the easiest couple of years, but today that's what I'm doing, is trying to actually solve that and bring the opportunity to agents inside of data and their systems to maximize the value and be better for their customers and their carriers as well.
So, going back to the beginning of it into what give us an idea of what Zinc looked like in the early years, especially from a staffing and structure standpoint.
So Zinc was a project at the Ohio PIA, and it was an agency of the future project. So back in market access was a challenge, technology was really emerging, and everyone knew it was going to be a thing, but no existing agency wanted to jump off of that bridge, Lindsay. Believe it or not, this was revolutionary stuff back then. And I was sitting on the council, Carey was on it too, and we were actually going to buy an agency and put it through this transformation. And that didn't work out for a lot of reasons. But at the end of the day, I had been listening to this conversation about the agency of the future, all the things that we should be thinking about doing and trying. And I was hearing business opportunity. And so when the project failed, meaning they couldn't acquire it, I was at a place working at an agency that was about to sell, but I was like, you know what? Why don't I start the agency of the future? Why don't we take all of these things and put it into practice? If the association will help me get off the ground in terms of help me form a corporation and do all those things, I will put myself through all of these disciplines and cycles and technologies and give a white paper at the end of it. God help us if that thing is still out there. But let's make it a report to the industry on that. And so Zinc started as an agency of the future with the idea that we could use technology, use cameras, if you can even believe it, video and things like that, and a really lean model to start an agency and grow it from scratch. And it was a suicide mission. I mean, most people thought it would fail, but 15 years later, it's still going. And born from that opportunity, I think our DNA was imprinted to always look at operations a little bit differently.
So you bought an agency and then you basically revamped that agency to build some tech in, some different thought processes into that agency from scratch, correct?
Almost correct. I didn't buy it. I just started from zero.
Okay.
So I opened up a piece of paper. I had a janitor's closet downtown Cleveland. And on the way downtown to my first day, Cleveland Clinic was throwing away a filing cabinet. So I grabbed that, threw it in my van, and with a laptop, a BlackBerry, attached camera, and an empty filing cabinet in a janitor's closet.
Yeah. So tell me, there's lots of scratch agencies that'll be listening to this. So we all know that scratch agencies today oftentimes come with a ton of experience. You came with experience because you had worked in an agency. And so you brought some of that experience in your scratch agency. Tell me how you went about building your staff and what did that look like a little bit? Because I really do want to talk about how you got from there to where you are now. And it's not a straight line, right? Like it just really isn't. So give me a little bit of an idea of what that looked like.
Yeah, and I think it's different today. I'll talk a little bit about that. But back in the day, you had to fight for carrier access, right? Now I think carrier access has been somewhat solved. There's no shortage of places you could get that. But literally back then, you were fighting for that direct appointment to try and get there on that. And then you were out selling as efficiently as you could and servicing at night, right? So you're kind of that one man band, so to speak. And I probably went too long. By today's standards, I talk to so many startups that are just like, oh, I'm using a VA for this and I have a process for that. And there's all of these systems where they are solely focused on the growth of the business. The only thing I didn't do was accounting and bookkeeping, but got up in the morning, did all my service work, sold all day, and then did an endorsement and emails at night. And as I look at our growth chart, and I'll share it with you, we went 4 years before we made our first hire. So I was outsourcing, I was using service centers, but I probably, in today's marketplace, I would have hired a VA. I would have focused solely on the sales effort. I would have outsourced my service at a much more efficient rate and better quality than I could have done myself and scaled faster. And so I think the startup agent of today has opportunities that just weren't present at that time. But I think the same principle that is there, which is to focus on the growth of the business. That's where the value is. And then to aggregate together, whether through market access or through third-party services, a lean, mean approach to that. And I think COVID has only accelerated the idea that you don't need physical presence. You don't need some of these traditional expenses inside of an agency so that you can focus on the growth mechanisms, which could be sales, it could be marketing, it could be acquisition, or some combination thereof.
So from that, how did Indium, or what is now Indium, but started as Market Source, how did that happen at the same time? Like, how did that fit in the timeline of starting Neon?
Well, many things, always with me. But that was an industry problem that the association was trying to solve, and they needed volunteers to do that. And so we literally drove around the state of Ohio and raised $15,000 at a time, sitting at hotels and cities saying, hey, if you're an agent and you want to build the future, we'll do it together. Out of that, though, I began to operate along with those volunteers, the market access provider, which are now become aggregators and things like that. And all the while, I'm thinking like, okay, this could be a way that an agency starts. And so fast forward to 2000, the Agency of the Future project, I was like, wait a minute, I know we all agree what the future looks like. They need a guinea pig to go out and try and do it. market access provider is open, I could get access to somebody like a Safeco on personal lines. And with one direct appointment, I could probably start something. And so I learned everything about download processing business through that and figuring out how agents could scale market access. I was working with the association on the agency of the future model. And by 2000, all they needed was a guinea pig that was either smart or dumb enough to try it. And so putting those three things together, the experience, the relationships, and the markets, that's really what launched Zinc. And then it's just on Monday morning, there's nobody there to help you. You just have to do everything else from there. So, but those three ingredients were kind of important to get off the ground. Now, like I said, those are all products and services that any agent starting up has 15 choices for all of them for, which makes it kind of different and unique.
So, then we fast forward and I found myself in a room with a whiteboard, lots of different markers where we're actually mapping out what this future could look like. And honestly, Seth, there's a lot of people that use words and terms that I think you've influenced, to be quite honest. Like there's a lots of people are talking about it now, but I'm talking about 2012, 2000, where you and I sat back in a room where we actually wrote a lot of the first business plan that was Neon at the time and became Be Atomic, right? So talk to me about the vision there and then how it influenced Zinc to get you where you are today.
Funny note on that, I have pictures of those whiteboards, believe it or not.
I know, yeah.
But yeah, so if you think about that unique role I was sitting in at that time, I'm running an independent agency. I'm working with an association to try and understand what the needs of an agents are. And I'm helping build an aggregator where this process is all moving on that. And so it's a pretty unique perspective. Like that's a viewpoint that many agents just don't ever get. Like I'm getting taught by people at association with consulting and things like that. I'm running an agency, so I'm looking at all the inefficiencies and the things that are happening in there. And then I'm watching carriers appoint these new aggregator models, and I'm watching how business doesn't flow through that. And in my mind, just with my background, you're starting to think, well, that's broken, that's broken, that's broken. Like, wait a minute, none of this goes together. Agents are going to bear the cost, the expense, and the heartache of doing all of this. And I guess what dawned on me most at that moment is nobody's going to solve it. So the customer wasn't going to solve it because they're just going to do whatever's on their phone increasingly. The carriers weren't capable of solving it because they're on 20 or 30-year technology and product cycles, which left agents in the middle to try and put all this together. And as I started to understand how agents got paid through an aggregator and what I made as an agent and the amount of investment it took to be an agency of the future, it became pretty clear that the current systems that we were given at that point weren't going to scale together. And so just naturally you start trying to solve and survive. And with your help and a couple of others, we started talking about like, okay, well, let's throw everything out. If we started today, what would it look like? And that really became the ideas and the principles of Neon, which was that the infrastructure that we need to run has never been built. And that most of us had been told the wrong thing. We were told that you buy an agency management system and it would manage your agency. Come to find out that an agency management system is very important, but it won't manage or necessarily scale or build an agency on its own. It's going to take an operator to do that. And so how do we solve that from a technology standpoint? I'd solved agency, I'd solved market access. The association had helped us solve kind of identifying the issues, but that hanging thing out there was this big hole in the infrastructure that agencies just didn't have.
So here's the disconnect though, Seth, because if I'm an average agency owner listening to this, they're thinking, I hear these words like API, connectivity, all these things. And, I've even seen people write, if an API was built tomorrow, how does it change your life the next day? Like, what are you going to come in to your agency and do differently? And for you, it does mean something because you've built this, you've worked on the infrastructure, you've done this. Talk to me about that a little bit and then how some of these things changed Zinc from the way that it was to the way that it could be. And you know me, like, listen, I'm all about maximizing the value of any business. That's what I do for a living. So it has to translate to that. Can you connect the dots on that? Because again, there's so many buzzwords, API being one of them, where they're like, listen, I hear people talk about that, but at the end of the day, I am renewing my policies. I'm managing my people. I don't know how that impacts me. It did impact Zinc. So can we break that down a little bit?
Yeah, let me walk you through like an economic view of what we're talking about here. So I have come to learn that the way we're measuring traditionally the way we measure agencies is wrong. We ask about things like headcount or revenue per employee, and those are good general indicators. I always say like if you're aiming at that, you'll end up in the right state. But being in Cleveland when you were trying to get to Columbus is not necessarily a victory. You're in Ohio, but good news, you're about 2.5 hours away, right? And so what I began to see is that an agency is really best measured by its smallest unit increment, which to me, I now have affectionately called the transaction. An agency is an aggregation of the things they do and the cost associated with it. So for instance, let's take add remove driver. That's happening thousands of times inside of your agency. And by understanding what you're doing, how many times it's happening, and what your costs are on that, you can begin to see exactly where you're making and losing money in your agency, and then can identify people, process, or technology to solve for it, as opposed to just saying, hey, I'm going to buy something that's going to solve my problems. So, for instance, inside Neon, I can see all the transactions that are happening by type and the cost. So the average agency pays 26 per transaction. Now that's average, right? Some are going to be more, some are going to be less. Depends on what state you're in, line of business, and all that. But on average, across millions of transactions inside of Neon, it's $26. Zinc is running at $19 on average. So I have roughly a $7 discount on everything we do. Make sense? Now you multiply that times the number of things Zinc is going to do this year. Zinc will do 28 service transactions this year for customers. So 28,000 times 7 is like 2 worth of net revenue. Now, what did he do with that? That net revenue, that discipline, that data, that systems and process means you have 200 of dry powder that the average agency doesn't have. And if you were valuing that, Carey Wallace, at a multiple of 8, 9, 10, whatever you want to say on that, that's literally, $1.5 to $2.5 million worth of
Real money.
value
Yeah.
that you've created. And so what I would demonstrate through that set of economics is understanding what's going on in your agency, data, using systems to be able to improve and optimize it, technology, and then training the right people to operate it and create value inside of it has not only a benefit to your customer, but it has a massive impact on your agency margins and ultimately the value of your business. And let's just face it, these things are valuable assets now and going forward. And so when you sit down with somebody, what's the value of my agency? It's like, well, talk to Carey. But if you want to change that, that requires a set of discipline that you need to look at. And that's really what Neon, and that's what my mindset is when I build technology and when we talk about how agencies should operate. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So, we actually valued Zinc long time ago, right? And there were things inside Zinc that would have made the value of Zinc not what it was. Fast forward to what, 2 years ago, a year ago? And some of it was you didn't have all the insight that you're talking about. You hadn't developed all of those things. Can you talk about a couple other things that by doing it then versus what you know now, what are some decisions you made inside Zinc? And also what are some outcomes, maybe carrier behaviors that allowed Zinc to go from X to Y? You know what I'm saying?
I sure do. So let's look at it in 3 buckets. Let's talk about expense first. Most agencies are looking at a P&L for their expense, right? A profit and loss statement on that piece of it. But they have very little visibility into process. So they give you the P&L and they say, Carey, what are you worth? And then you have to sit there and look through the chart of accounts and understand what are you doing here? What are you doing here? But behind that is a person you're paying and a process that they're managing. Visibility into that and where you're truly making and losing money on expense allows you to make better decisions around who should I hire? Who should I not hire? What is non-performance costing me? And what third-party services should I be looking at in order to understand that? So expense understanding data allows you to see really clearly where your expenses are and how you can better manage those. That matters when you go to sell. Second, you've got dry powder now to be able to look at growth, right? And when you and I valued Zinc at first, it was like, you're like, hey, you're way out of whack on marketing. And I'm like, yeah, I know. We're trying stuff, we're doing stuff, and 80% of marketing doesn't work, Carey, but the 20% that does is very valuable to what we're doing. And so, but through valuation, we were able to look at it and say, like, okay, how could we market better and create more value? And value might be spending the same, but getting better results on it. Or it might be reducing types of marketing to get the same result. But either way, that helped us look at those growth incentives. And then the third thing was smart use and efficient use of technology. And so affectionately, agents refer to it as the shiny object syndrome. I'm
Oh,
sure
yeah.
when you value agencies, it's like, hey, you have 3 people, but 30 technologies. Can you walk me through that? It's like, well, I was at that convention, I bought that. I bought this off a website. Some insurance expert talked about that, so I bought that too. And the questions are you using it? Is it driving value? What was the implementation like? And so by getting evaluation, we were able to look at the areas that we were kind of weak in. We were able to invest in areas that were driving uniqueness to us, and we could evaluate the types of technologies that we were using. In the same time, Neon was developing and we were aggregating data from agents. And so we were starting to look at unique metrics that we were creating, the cost per transaction, I call it, to say, hey, CSRs only do 22 things, producer only do 5 things, how many times it's happening, who's involved with it, what are those processes, and what are those net costs? And out of that was born the metrics that we use inside the product today, really out of the process that Zinc went through of growing, building, being valued, and transitioning. So Zinc has been and always been the industry's lab for this stuff, whether people knew it or not. I was always building stuff for the industry. This one is a product now, but all the learnings always went back into the ecosystem.
So, Seth, if I'm listening to this and I'm an agent that says, you know what, I want to do this, like I want my data to work for me, but honestly, I don't know what my cost per transaction is. I don't know. Like I barely know what my cost per customer is. In fact, I might not even have a really good handle on what my retention is, given the fact that I'm using an ANMS system. I use download. There's all kinds of challenges with that. There's a lot of different challenges with the systems that I have. How do I step into this? Like you've been doing this for a super long time. What advice would you give to someone? Where should I focus and how would I step into it? Because this is a cultural change. This is not an overnight journey for anyone. And I don't want anyone listening to this to think that it's an overnight journey, because Zinc in the beginning versus Zinc when I did evaluation and Zinc where it is today are very different organizations. There's no 2 ways around it. So what advice would you give to an agent that's listening and saying, yes, I want that. How do I start?
Stop buying stuff. Stop trying stuff. This is the ideal moment for an agent to slow down. If you want to go fast nowadays, go slow first. We've been on this. The industry has pumped speed and adoption to agents for the last 5 to 7 years. Heck, I even think I was part of that on some level. I apologize if anyone, I've hurt anyone in the process, but it was just technology, adoption, conference, do this, you're not this. And it's just like, and we have cooked into the mentality of an agent that if they're not buying a technology today, then boy, you are 10 years behind your industry. And if you're not pumping out this today, you're behind. And I would just say enough. Stop. These are simple businesses, but they're difficult. Customer service is difficult. Technology is difficult. Legacy partnerships that drive products are difficult, and customers are ever changing. Now more than ever, I encourage the average agent to just stop for a minute, evaluate where you're at, and start with the basics, which to me is always data. Stop making decisions on emotions. Stop making decisions on marketing. Data. That could be talking to someone like you, agency focus. It could be like just, hey, show me where I'm at. It could be a data product like we offer, Neon Analytics. Bring your data in and we can start benchmarking. It's super cheap, super affordable, but let's just start looking at the data. The data will start to talk to you. If you stop talking and start listening to the business, And if you slow down and start fundamentally looking at the business from a data standpoint, it'll start to talk to you and it'll tell you, hey, service over here is struggling, or line of business is struggling, or carrier relationship is struggling, or systems and processes are weak and behind. And as it's talking to you, you can start listening to it. Now with data and with insights into it, now you can start to adopt slowly. And it's, to your point, it is not an overnight change. Okay, let's make a change in this service model over here. Let's move from this carrier to this carrier. And now let's bring in a particular technology or system or process that allows us to do it. And by going slow, I swear you will go fast. And I just think it's time for us to just pause for a minute and quit buying stuff and adopting stuff and just look at truly what is going on in our business and how we can build off of it.
You know, it's funny. I agree with you 100%. And honestly, Chris Klein's voice was ringing in my ear because he actually speaks on the slow down to speed up kind of concept. But I agree with you. And I also think when you listen to people who have made the journey, don't expect yourself to be at the end of the journey. Like you're not going to start with what is my cost per transaction. You're going to start with what are the areas that are a pain point inside my agency? What are we strong at? What are we trying to accomplish? And what things do we need to, in order to help us get there? Which, you know, honestly, that's part of what I do in the process, because not every agency is built to do the same thing. They all have the same core ideas and core behaviors inside an agency, but not everyone's trying to do the exact same thing. So if you get really clear on where am I good, what am I trying to accomplish, and what do I need to get there, it starts to actually tell you what should I be paying attention to, right?
Yeah, and as an example, so I was just looking at this inside Neon Analytics. We have Hawksoft agents are bringing their data in. Okay, so inside of Hawksoft, we can now see all the activities that an agency is doing, and we can see what they're automating. So now they're bringing in like agency Zoom data or Insured Mind CRM data. And we can see exactly how many activities they're generating manually, hand-to-hand combat, pick up the phone and do all that, and then how many they're doing through automation. Now, interestingly, our best users of automation, 41 of their agency activities are being automated through CRM. 41. But on average, the average Hawksoft user is only automating 9% of their activities. So there is literally like a 31% delta between the average agency and a highly automated agency. Well, what does that delta cost? It is a human. It is lack of customer experience. It's lack of touch, which shows up in retention, right? Which is going to affect your growth metrics and all those things. And so there's a perfect example where your system can output data that somebody can visualize for you and show you how you contrast against your peers and what you could be doing with what you're already paying for, right? And that's
Yeah.
really powerful data.
So I will tell you this, like, you know, I say this often. I don't know that I say it publicly, but I am going to say it because back in that room when we were with that whiteboard, I firmly believed then, and I know it to be true now, that the benchmarks that we measure inside an agency are not the ones that have been published for 20 years. They will be changing. It's a benchmark like that. That's not published anywhere. There's nowhere where you can say, you know, the average agency that drives profitability automates X number. They also don't publish the average agency that utilizes virtual assistants are able to do X, Y, and Z. In the next few years, those are the metrics that people will be talking about and the difference makers that are there. The people that are able, the agencies that are able to use data to drive their decisions in order to then rethink their agency's roles, responsibilities, resources, will be redefining those benchmarks. And that's what excites me. That's what I love to see in the agencies that I get to work with, but it's not an overnight thing, right? It just isn't.
It's not. And I think, well, and I'm not plugging myself here, but I think I'm making up a lot of this data. Like I think, and I hear it when I talk to, like we're talking to large aggregators now and they're saying, hey, we're talking to data providers and they just want us to import their data and then and pay them. And then our data is aggregated. And when they talk to me, they're like, hey, but you're showing us what matters in it. You're showing us what's different in it. And emerging from all of these conversations and all of these products that we've been able to put together is a clear line of delineation between performers and non-performers. And it is the things they're doing or not doing and the visibility or the invisibility of those things that is determining the winners of that. And I can see it, it's coming. And these very valuable assets of independent agents are going to live and die based on that data. And so I love what you're doing. I love the focus on valuation. I love the focus on what is the business fundamentals and all those things from a financial standpoint. If you marry that with an operational data set that brings a charter of accounts alive and shows you what's being done inside of that charter accounts with people and process and technology, now you have a data set that now is actionable and put into to your agency, now becomes something you can really optimize.
No question about it. And I think the good news is everything you're talking about, you know, it's not in the everyday agency. It just isn't. You know, it's still the exception. In fact, I'd say data impacting businesses across all industries is still in its infancy. There's a lot of industries that are much further ahead than insurance. There's no question about that. But, you know, there's statistics out there to say that lots of large industries that have data strategies and are putting a ton of money behind it are still not able to see the total impact because it's tough to get people to adopt things. It's tough to get people to see the purpose. So, you know, I guess I'd like to talk about that a little bit. You had a team at Zinc that had to adopt these crazy things. Like you had marketing that was insane. Trust me, I looked at it and said, Seth, I believe that you're spending about 10 times what the average agency is in marketing a long time ago. And you had to get your team to understand why that was important and to really get behind not only that, but I'm also going to build, you know, an infrastructure for a technology that you may not fully understand. Talk to me about how you led your team through that process.
Well, not always perfectly. Um, but I think the epiphany that I had, and then I think Zinc went through, and most agencies are going to have to go through at some point here, is this stopped being an insurance business and started being a professional service business. And those are different. The mindset of I'm an insurance agent running an insurance agency, or I'm a business owner running an insurance agency, was really the change that we had to go through. And what is our business? It's truly customer sales and service. Our product happens to be insurance. And so you need to know insurance. And don't get me wrong, if you're selling widgets, you got to know the widget. But being a widget salesperson is not what you build your organization around. We build it around customer experience. And so you have to retrain or rehire around what you actually are. And then you have to introduce the supportive technologies and processes around that. And that's change management. And independent agents, typically successful agents that start and own businesses, don't think about change management because they're the fire person up front that's just like, let's go through that door, let's put out that fire and run the pumps and let's go. But that's not what an organization is. An organization is built of people who are service people and operators, and that is not their mindset. And so most often the independent agent has to address that difference in the organization and come up with a change management process. You could be right on the idea, but if you don't have the change management in place, the culture isn't aligned, then nothing's going to happen. And it is almost never an insurance change anymore. It's how do we adopt technology? How do we customize our service? How are we more relevant for our customers and more able for our customers? And oh, by the way, it's insurance. And so I think that change is something we went through at Zinc. And hey, I got a lot of stub toes for it. We lost some people along the way, some really good people, maybe even people that we didn't handle the right way. All that to say, learn from it. Change management is the first thing that we talk about when you're coming on Neon is like, is your organization ready for this change? If it's not, start there. Call me back in 6 months. I'll be here. But get your organization in a place where it's ready for that kind of mindset. And once it is, then we've got the technology and the data to help you get there.
I think that's such an important piece, like how to lead your team through that change. But also, what advice would you give to someone who's my age, who's an employee going through a big change like that and trying to manage and handle that?
Ask questions. I mean, respectfully,
Mm-hmm.
But don't be afraid to question the leader on that. So at Zinc, I would say things, and I should have been called out by some of our teammates. They should have said, "Hey, Seth, that's crazy. We're not there yet." And we pushed through that. And you know what? A young voice saying, "Hey, walk me through the logic of this because I don't see it, but you explain it to me." Just you asking me to explain it to you helps me think through it better and differently. And so, I think so much of our culture has young people confronting maybe the more experienced people. And I don't know that that's the right way. I think asking thoughtful questions that are on your mind. Why are we doing this? Why does this make sense? Could you walk me through how this is going to affect me? What skills do I need to have in order to do that? All of those things I have to answer you, Lindsay. And when I answer you, it better make sense to me, because if it doesn't make sense to me, then whatever I tell you is not going to make sense. And so I think the art of asking questions is something that young people can use to leverage and in many ways shepherd a more experienced but less able leader through a moment where you could probably prevent me from making significant mistakes inside of an agency. And so I think that's one thing that you could do. And I think the other thing is share your ideas. You see things as a younger person that an older person wouldn't. And you think, well, maybe I see it, but I don't. I don't. And so if you tell me about it, I'm going to be better off for it, and so will the organization.
No question about that. And I think if you're in the right organization and that's the culture, you're in the right place. I will tell you this. When I think about young people coming into the industry right now, I think about what does that look and feel like? Would I rather be in an agency that has some tools to set me up for success and helps me learn quicker, be able to adapt to the industry quicker, and get that knowledge that I need to be successful? And that could be a leader that's open. That could be technology that sets me up to really see those data insights and know where to focus my time, versus one that doesn't. And I think it's such a opportunity, because we have so much of the industry getting ready to leave, and we have such an opportunity for innovation and young people to come in. Listen, insurance isn't sexy. Like, there's just no two ways around that. Nobody thinks this industry is like the place you should be. And it's the best kept secret, sadly, but it is. Like, I've met some of the best people I know in this industry, and they know so much about other businesses, which amazes me. I think there's such an opportunity as a business owner to set it up that people want to work in your agency. They want to be the future of your agency, and they want to succeed. So if you're able to do that, you will attract talent. That's where the Lindsays of the world want to be, right?
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
I believe, and I see this, Lindsay, in what I'm doing, I think your data is going to follow you. So picture a baseball card, right? On the front of the baseball card is your picture, right? And you're at your position. You've got the bat on the shoulder. You've got the mid at first base. You're making the catch. But if you flip it over, it's data. And it shows all of your performance by season, what's going on. And I believe, and I know we're building it in Neon, the performance passport, which says, hey, Lindsay, now everything you did or didn't do on the job is a data point. And you're going to take that with you. I see the day when you're walking into an agency and you're saying, here's my data, plug it into your system and tell me and make me an offer. I'm a free agent at the end of the year. Here's the back of my baseball card. Here's how fast I process. Here's how much I sell. Here's the impact I have on EBITDA inside of the agency. Here's my customer retention numbers. This is what makes me different than every other player in my position in industry. I'm a free agent at the end of this year. I'm talking to 3 agencies. Make me an offer.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you think of data, we think of it as agency data, but agency data is now becoming portable. And I believe that data is going to follow young people into the marketplace. And just like data and free agency made the ball players the richest people around, I believe that talented agency people with the data supporting their performance are going to be some of the most valuable players in the industry.
I agree more, my friend. I could not agree more. Well, like I said, we could talk about data forever. Like, honestly, we could probably do 6 podcasts and never scratch the surface of the thousands of conversations we've had about how data can transform your business. No way around that. So tell me, what was the ultimate track for Zinc? Like, what did that look like when you wanted to decide what the future of Zinc was? What do you think data's impact was?
Well, starting from where we started, from the agency of the future, it was always less people doing more. And without any insurance privilege or heritage, it was always, what is the other guy not doing? And so data told us to market when, and we were marketing when the industry said, hey, marketing's cool. It's like, hey, let's go to Zinc and see that they've been marketing for years on that. We were selling on the internet and still do today, sell policies while people are sleeping on the internet. And data told us to do that. It was having less people. We run half the staff of an agency our size usually because of systems and automations. Data told us to do that. And then last year, Zinc got its first data revenue check. I mean, literally, as part of Neon, we sold data. People paid to see agency data, and we got revenue, which is crazy. So data into money. And now I look at it, we're putting our contacts into databases so that we get customer shopping alerts. So I know when you're on Progressive shopping your insurance, now data is telling me that you're shopping your insurance. I should reach out. Data has turned into money time and time again. And when you think about it from a business standpoint, that's just dry powder to be better and pay people more and do more. But when you're talking about perpetuation or exit, that's your life savings.
It is.
And so investing in it, in your people, process, and technology, you will get a tenfold return when it's time for you to hang it up.
I like to think about it as it's not a lifestyle at that point. It's generational money that could be life-changing for agencies. It really is. And listen, I love this industry. I absolutely love what independent agents do for their customers, for their communities, for us as a whole. I believe it's an incredibly noble industry. It's also an area that I think has made more people millionaires than ever. I can't think of another place, right? I just can't. And if you do it right, it's like generational money. It's incredible. And that's not the reason, but it's an asset that you can't ignore. It's why private equity's here and they're not going anywhere. It's an incredible place to be. So I appreciate you spending time with us today, Seth. And I want anyone who listened to this and they want to know more about how to go through this journey, how can they reach out to you? How can they find you?
So don't hit me on social because I don't do it anymore. It just sucked the life out of me. But just send me a note, Seth@beatomic.com. If I go on, it's on LinkedIn and it's only when people make me post. But you can message me through LinkedIn and Seth Zaremba, but just shoot me an email, Seth@beatomic.com. And I would be happy to have this conversation and show you what I'm doing and show you what I think the industry needs to be doing and just also helping out. It's funny, this morning, a local agency found out that I actually live in Cleveland. So they had been following what we're doing and they're like, hey, we live 20 minutes. Can we come in this morning? And they're building an Erie agency from scratch. And they just want to know how to get a carrier appointment. And I love that kind of stuff. So if very worse, just stop by Cleveland and stop in for a cup of coffee too.
Absolutely. Well, I got to tell you, my friend, I appreciate everything that you've done for me. Helped me learn about this industry in a completely different way. You've helped me see things I wouldn't have seen otherwise, and you have been an incredible mentor and friend. So I urge anyone, if you want to talk to someone who gets this and gets the future, Seth is your guy. So anyway, but thank you for joining both of us. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. I've watched you go through everything over the course of your career and see what you're doing with agents. I mean, I've watched you go through everything. And I'm really proud of the work you're doing because you have taken all of the same things that I had exposure to, and I've taken it into technology and practice, and you've taken it into consulting and helping agencies. And I feel like I'm super proud of the work you're doing and all the things you just said about me, I would say about you. I've learned so much working with you. When I look at Beatomic's business plan, it's like you and I wrote that together. And I'm pleased to be your friend and a colleague. And Lindsay, you're really lucky to have Carey Wallace in your life.
Oh, don't I know it? Don't I know it?
Anyway, all right. We will talk again soon, my friend. And I guess I'll see you in Utah, right?
Yeah, I'll see you in a couple weeks in Utah. Take care.
All right.